My name is Chuck Wygand, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also the owner of Sand and Serenity Counseling, where I treat patients who have post-traumatic stress, complex trauma, as well as co-occurring disorders. I'm also a person who's in long-term recovery myself from life-threatening mental health issues, namely major depression and alcohol use disorder. Because of the unique perspective I get, I feel like I'm qualified to offer some insights about the difficulties that I see on both sides in asking for help. Largely it has to do with how we as a society can start to prevent tragedies by promoting mutual understanding of what either side is going through. Person asking for help as well as the person who's in the position to provide it. In doing so, what I'm going to do is briefly examine the role that emotional safety plays in the ability to ask for help. How I believe that this factor influences the process every bit as much as any willingness to overcome pride or egotism in asking for it. And after that, I'm going to look at some of the issues which people who are in need are probably going to have to navigate. Ones like developing trust and open-mindedness. At times, getting past these obstacles, they might help to improve our performance, let's say in the classroom or on the job. At other times, they just might predict our ability to survive. Like somebody like me when you're trying to quit drinking. Why am I making such a big fuss over what has traditionally been viewed as such a common proposition? It's pretty simple. I'm really tired of watching people suffer in situations which I believe are all too often just needless. Things that could easily be fixed if we just start to fix some of the broken links in this chain of supply and demand among human beings. I've intentionally broken this topic into parts 1 and 2, and I've done so because I believe that there's a lot to digest. Even some ideas that may not, for many people, seem so readily obvious. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button at the bottom of your screen. And if you have comments, I really hope that you'll leave those too. While you may disagree or agree with something of my opinions, my real goal is to create content that's thought-provoking. I just want to see if I can stir some positive discussion about sustainable social change. With that in mind, let's get started. I will say that before I do that, this is my first video. I'm nervous and I'm just kind of trying to power on through because I find this to be such an important topic. When I hear about someone who's unwilling or unable to ask for the help that they seem to so desperately need, it's almost guaranteed that the person's pride is soon going to be questioned. I hear things like, if they just stop trying to be so independent, if they'd let somebody help them, if they would get their ego in check. I listened to this enough times that this neat little summary statement, I after listening to it, I began to wonder, well, if it's that simple, why don't more people just take this seemingly simple advice? Is it possible that asking for help is more complicated than it looks? When you were growing up, were you ever made to feel that there was something wrong with you if you struggled to learn a concept or master a skill? How about if you failed to meet someone else's expectations or held values that were different from the norm? Did you ever feel nervous or angry about the way you were spoken to when you were trying to learn, when you were actually trying your best? How about the physical gestures or the tones of voice that people subjected to you at these times? Did any of these situations ever unfold in front of other people, like in front of a classroom, your classmates, your peers, or in front of teammates? Did the physical sensations that you experienced, they ever make you want to run away or fight your way out? Did you freeze up? I sure did. On more occasions than I could possibly count. I'd feel confused, embarrassed, sometimes sick to my stomach. My limbs would shake almost uncontrollably, like I couldn't possibly will my hands to stop shaking. I'd sometimes hyperventilate, and slowly but surely, I would start to wall myself off from other people. Anybody who seemed like they might possibly have the potential to hurt me, especially people who were seemingly a little too eager to help. I began to make these like solemn oaths to myself, like I'm never going to trust anybody again. I'm not letting them hurt me, not like this. It's just too painful. This is one big reason why I believe that the issue extends beyond pridefulness. There are more, I truly believe. The next one for me is obligation. Obligation has, from what I can see, a few different wrinkles. And for people whose self-esteem may be diminished, these can be very hard to navigate. And why? They force us to understand and uphold boundaries. It's definitely not easy to do when I'm in need of help and I'm feeling vulnerable. So, a couple different scenarios on this. In one, may be asking for help, and that may involve falling right into debt. In cases where a needy party has borrowed money, this is the truth. I mean, there's no getting around this. I borrow money to get out of some kind of jam or something like that, and there's no way to avoid the fact that I owe after that. But what about other forms of obligation? Like when a person who's given aid, like maybe helping someone to move or providing transportation for someone without a vehicle. What about when they suggest, either directly or indirectly, maybe half jokingly, like, now you owe me? In my mind, these words and these inferences, sometimes they're just facial gestures or whatever it might be, they can start really sticking in my mind. Start thinking things like, well, if and when collection day comes, am I going to be able to pay this covert debt? One that's like not really defined, but I know it's there. Will I have to sacrifice something that I find to be too dear? Maybe my values or my sanity? And how about another form of obligation? This one comes along the lines of feeling obliged to adopt someone's advice or instruction in its entirety. Feeling that in order to respect the person who took the time to give it to me, I have to relinquish my right to decide what's right for me. I'm kind of like forfeiting my autonomy or my independence. This can really start some inner conflict. I start to sometimes, or have seen myself worrying that I could be seen as ungrateful, maybe ignorant, if I only adopt part of what's been suggested, even though I don't perhaps believe that the rest is going to likely serve me. Maybe it could even make things worse if I try what's been suggested. I still feel obligated to take that as it's been proffered to me. Now, there's one more obstacle that I've identified as being one that gets in the way of asking for help. And I found this to be a big one. This is fear of being minimized or trivialized. And typically in a situation, one party is either inadvertently or intentionally capitalizing on my disclosure of pain. They hijack the conversation. They make it all about them. I go to somebody hoping to open up, and I'm greeted with some kind of crazy response like, I know exactly what you're going through. It's awful. Trust me. Whether or not they've ever experienced it or not, whatever, maybe they've seen it on TV. And then just to hyperbolize it, like, my mother-in-law's second cousin's stepbrother had the same exact issue. This is what happened to her. Later, you're listening to a 20-minute diatribe about what's happened to this person. Has absolutely no pertinence to me, whatever. I don't really get any opportunity to talk about the pain that I'm in, even get any kind of rational feedback or something. And what happens is, like, I walk away feeling nobody cares. Is this what this is what asking for help is supposed to be? This is why society is always telling me, don't bottle things up, you got to get it out. And what happens is that I walk away feeling sometimes even worse than I had prior to this. So far, I have pointed out any number of reasons why I believe it can be hard to ask for help. But now, if you take this, what I've said so far, solely at face value, it seems to suggest that those who are in the position to give help also bear the entire burden of delivering it to someone like me who's in need. That they're responsible for detecting all of the emotional insecurities I've developed on the path leading up to this point. And they should be entirely capable and willing to put their own egos and habits aside to enhance my well-being. This is just not the case. I think that thinking along these lines is as unfair as it is impractical. At best, it keeps me stuck in self-pity, feeling like no one cares, nobody can understand poor Chuck. At worst, the same thinking along my lines might just kill me. With this in mind, in part 2, I'll examine some of the responsibilities that I have to assume in order to obtain the help I need. This includes challenging my expectations, stepping outside my comfort zone, and developing skills that enable me to control my nerves, especially when I'm asking for help. After all, this is a two-way proposition. Hopefully, maybe even a partnership, even if it's only for a brief moment in time. Again, if you're enjoying this video, I hope that you'll hit the like button at the bottom, and please consider subscribing to my channel. I don't purport to be an expert on the subject, so I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.